Canadian moms and dads will soon be able to choose an extended 18-month parental leave. This means more time with baby and a guaranteed job when you return to work, but doesn't necessarily mean more money. It's the same amount, just spread out over a longer amount of time. So the question is, can you afford to take the 18 months? Joining us this morning to help figure all that out is personal finance expert Rubina Ahmed-Haq. Always good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, other than, sort of the length of time, 12 versus 18 months, what does this mean when we're talking about finances?
Well, it means that you really have to see if you can actually afford it. Because like you said, it's not more money, it's just the same benefits spread over 18 months. So if you're taking a 12-month classic maternity leave, it's about $550 a week that you'll be getting. If you spread that over 18 months, it's now $360 that you'll be getting. So you really have to look at, what do I bring home right now, and what's the difference weekly between what I'll be getting in EI, and if my company tops up, and then what I'm actually going to be needing to actually be away from work for this long.
So much to think about before you make such a crucial decision. What about if both parents want to be off at the same time?
So both parents can be off at the same time, but you're burning through the leave twice as fast. So people can decide, mom and dad can decide, okay, we're going to be off at the same time, but that means, rather than it being, so say you go with the 12 months, you're going to burn it up in 6 months. So 17 weeks is for the mother who's actually having the baby, and the rest of it is called paternal leave. Or so either parent can take it, mom or dad. So usually moms end up taking it for the entire year, but a dad can take it as well. So if dad decides to be off and they're off at the same time, it's as if you're burning it twice as fast. So it's just a choice you have to make financially. Does that make sense? Because you will be getting twice as much benefit, but it's going to run out twice as fast.
What factors do you need to consider then when you're trying to lay out on paper, is this something we can afford to do?
So you want to make sure that you first understand how much you're actually going to be getting. So figure out exactly how much EI you'll be getting, whether you're taking 12 months or 18 months. Figure out what top-up you're getting from your own employer, if you're getting one, and what the difference is between what you're normally used to getting with your salary. Then you've got to make a baby budget. So you've got to forecast a little bit, how much is this baby going to cost me? And then staying home, how much is it going to save me? You're not going to be paying for transportation, paying for maybe lunches out at the food court. These kind of expenses will go away, but other expenses, of course, are going to be in there. So these are the things you have to consider. And then, can you tap into any savings that you have? Maybe take a loan from a bank. Maybe tap into your emergency fund. You have some money to make up the difference of what you're going to need to get through that leave.
And I guess you just have to figure out how valuable is that time at home to you when you factor all that in. Having a baby, especially if you're first-time parents, can seem a little daunting. You're not quite sure what expenses are going to come up. So, with your experience, tell us, what things do you need to prioritize? What needs to be top of the list?
So my number one advice is, don't over-plan for your baby the first time around. Sometimes I see mothers, they plan the entire year out and they buy all the stuff for the whole year. My best advice is just plan in sort of quarterly segments, so 3 months at a time. So plan 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months. Then you know what size your baby is, what diapers they wear, what wipes they like. All these things that we know as moms. As we get into motherhood, we realize, okay, this is something I didn't need, this is something I did need. And then talk to moms who have just had babies. I know we love talking to our own moms, but they were moms maybe 30 years ago. But talk to moms who have just had babies and say, what did you really find useful and what was completely useless? And then also go to your own network and say, what can you give me as hand-me-downs? What can you get secondhand? There's great Facebook buy and sell sites, Kijiji, Craigslist, all these sort of online places that you can go to get stuff for really, really cheap.
Aside from the stressful thoughts of, raising kids and becoming parents, you've also got to do all these heavy financial planning. But do it earlier is always your advice.
Yes, and also don't forget that you still have to save for retirement while you're off on mat leave. You still have to keep
you're stressing me out.
If you can. And remember that EI, you're getting that money, it's still tax. You still have to put it into your tax return, so it's still going to be subject to tax once you, even when you go back. So you've got to keep that in mind, that it's not like it's $550 in your hand. It's still subject to income tax. So all of these things are really important to consider because that's really going to help you decide whether it's actually worth it. And in most places across Canada, daycare is much more expensive, from 12 months to 18 months. So factor that in as well. So staying home for that extra 6 months and not having to pay those extra daycare costs, because daycare costs tend to go down after 18 months. Is it worth it to you?
You might actually save some money. And time is money, literally, in this case.
Well, that's the intrinsic benefit, right? So you have to really decide. And I believe that this is really a good solution for women who can afford it. But being home with your baby for 18 months, I mean, that's something you can't really put a price tag on.
All right, Rubina, always good to have you here. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.